In the vast histories of the Star Wars universe, countless Jedi and Sith have risen and fallen, but few relationships are as layered or as tragic as the one between Kreia and her most infamous student, Revan. Their bond was not merely that of master and apprentice, it was something deeper, something closer to the meeting of kindred spirits. Each saw in the other a reflection of their own discontent with the dogma of the Jedi, and a shared yearning to understand the true nature of the Force. Kreia was never a conventional Jedi. Even in her earliest years as a teacher, she harbored a profound skepticism towards the Order's rigid philosophy. Where others taught submission to the Force, Kreia questioned whether the Force itself was worthy of reverence at all. Was it truly the benevolent energy that the Jedi doctrine proclaimed it was? Or was it something more insidious, an uncaring, manipulative, a will that shaped the galaxy's destinies only to feed on its cyclical hunger? When Revan came to Kreia as a student, he was already marked with relentless curiosity. Revan did not just simply accept the teachings handed down by the Council. He challenged them, dissected them, and sought something beyond the binary struggle of the light and the dark side. In Revan, Kreia believed that she had found a mind as sharp and as restless as her own. She saw in him a promise, the possibility that he might become the first individual to look into the abyss of the Force, and emerge not merely as a servant of its will, but as something greater, something unbound. The promise of Revan being more than an apprentice. To understand Kreia's fascination with Revan, we must first understand what made him so different from the other Jedi of this generation. Even before the Mandalorian Wars broke out, Revan possessed a rare charisma, a force of personality so potent that others were drawn to him almost instinctively. But charisma alone did not define Revan. What truly set him apart was the depth of his insight and his skill in the Force. Revan never shielded away from any difficult questions whatsoever. Where most Jedi learned to avoid contemplating the nature of the dark side, Revan was willing to study it dispassionately, to weigh its truths against the Jedi's dogma. Revan believed that knowledge, all knowledge, was worth pursuing, even if it meant venturing into forbidden territory. To Revan, ignorance was never a virtue. For Kreia, though, this was more than admirable, it was essential. She believed the Jedi Council's insistence on blind obedience stifled true wisdom and progression. Where others saw Revan's questioning as dangerous, Kreia saw as evidence of a mind that might one day uncover the hidden truths of the Force itself. It is no exaggeration to say that in Revan, Kreia saw the possibility of a new kind of being, someone who could rise above the endless struggle between the Jedi and Sith, the light and the dark, and even perhaps transcend the Force's manipulation of all life. This was the hope that defined Kreia's early faith in her young apprentice Revan. But then came the Mandalorian Wars, the crucible in which Revan's legend and his fall would be forever forged. When the Mandalorians invaded Republic space, the Council wanted to use patience and restraint. They believed the Force would provide guidance in time, that direct intervention would only worsen the war. But to Revan, inaction was cowardice. He could not stand by and watch his worlds burned, and billions of beings suffered while the Council hid behind the illusion of moral superiority. Many Jedi shared the Council's fear that Revan's crusade would lead him directly into the path of the dark side, but Kreia did not share this belief. To Kreia, Revan's defiance was not simply arrogance of youth, it was an essential first step towards rejecting the complacency, the stagnation that had infected the Jedi Order. To Kreia, this war was never about military glory, it was about forging a will strong enough to challenge the cosmic tyranny of not the Jedi or the Sith, but the Force. Revan's decision to fight the Mandalorians was a moment of pure transformation, a sign that he might become something no Jedi had ever dared to be. Truly free. And so Kreia supported her student, even as the Council condemned him. In her private reflection, she saw Revan's crusade as the necessary forging of a spirit unafraid to question everything. But the path that began in righteous defiance would end in total darkness. Revan's victory on Malachor V was decisive, but it was also catastrophic. In the final battle, Revan deployed the Mass Shadow Generator, an immense superweapon that tore apart the planet's crust, annihilating both Mandalorian and Republic forces in their entirety. The cost of life was beyond counting, but more than that, something in Revan's spirit was irrevocably transformed and broken. In the aftermath, Revan vanished deep into the unknown regions, and when he returned, it was not as a conquering hero, but as a dark lord of the Sith. With Darth Malak at his side, Revan launched a campaign to crush the Republic, wielding the Starforge now, and the power of the ancient Rakatan species as instruments of pure conquest. This was the moment that changed Kreia's understanding of her student. She believed that Revan's defiance of the Jedi was a rejection of all dogma, a step towards true liberation. Instead, now she saw that Revan had simply replaced one form of servitude with another. Yet even then, she did not condemn him. She was fascinated even more. What had he seen beyond the edge of known space? What knowledge had transformed his vision of the galaxy so that he would choose to become the very thing that he once opposed? This was the question. In the years that followed, Kreia's curiosity became obsession. She was not content to dismiss Revan's fall as weakness or corruption. She needed to understand what he had discovered in the Force. What secrets had the unknown regions revealed to her former apprentice? What truths lay hidden within the Sith teachings that could turn a would-be liberator into a tyrant? Was it possible that Revan's conquest was not simply a lust for power, but a means for a greater end? These questions consumed Kreia, and when the Council confronted her, accusing her of corrupting Revan, of teaching him to question too much, Kreia would be officially exiled, deemed too dangerous, her heresy too great. Betrayed by the very order she had once served, Kreia's bitterness deepened. But more importantly, her conviction crystallized. The Force itself was the enemy, the hidden puppeteer guiding all life towards the endless cycle of conflict. It was this conviction that drew Kreia back to the site of great death, back to Malachor, the place where Revan's fall had begun in her eyes. There, Kreia uncovered the Traya Academy, a repository of ancient knowledge buried beneath the shattered surface, knowledge that belonged to the Sith. In the darkness that now consumed Malachor, Kreia embraced her destiny. She no longer would be a mere observer or a teacher. She would become something new, a force of her own making, unbound by Jedi or Sith, devoted to the singular purpose of destroying the Force's hold over all life. And so Kreia became Darth Traya, the Lord of Betrayal. She allied herself with Sion and Nihilus, not out of allegiance to the Sith, but because she believed that they were tools, stepping stones into her quest to wound the Force itself. Ironically, it was Revan's failure that had inspired her transformation. She still believed that he had come closer to anyone from breaking free of the Force's will. But in the end, Revan too had succumbed to the same cycle that he had sworn to escape. And now came the final judgment of Revan. In Kreia's later reflections, her view of Revan became a paradox. He was once her greatest hope, and yet, now her most profound disappointment. She respected the clarity of his vision and the boldness of his defiance. No other Jedi had dared so much, risked so much, or seen so far into the abyss. But ultimately, Revan proved unable to escape the binary of Jedi and Sith. He had merely traded one set of chains for another. To Kreia, this was the final proof that the Force itself was the true villain of the galaxy. It created individuals of extraordinary potential like Revan, only to corrupt and destroy them later. It offered power, but demanded servitude. In her mind, Revan's story was a cautionary one. No matter how brilliant, no matter how driven, no being could truly be free so long as the Force was allowed to shape destiny. And so Kreia resolved to do what Revan would not. She would break the cycle, even if it meant destroying herself and everyone else in the process. Many had wondered whether Revan was, in some sense, a proto-chosen one, a being whose destiny was to bring balance to the Force, or perhaps to maybe even end its tyranny forever. To Kreia, Revan was certainly something close to that. She believed that Revan embodied a unique convergence of will, intellect, and power, qualities that may have enabled him to transcend the limitations of Jedi and Sith. But where Anakin's destiny was shaped by prophecy, Revan's path was shaped by his own choices. He was not compelled by visions or ancient predictions. He simply chose to question everything, to defy everyone, and to seek the truth at no matter the cost. It was this quality that Kreia admired the most about Revan, and it was the same quality that made his ultimate failure so bitter. Revan came closer than anyone to escaping the Force's grasp, but in the end, he was still forever bound to it. His conquests, his alliances, his betrayals, it was all a part of the same cycle engineered by the Force. Kreia's entire life became defined by her attempt to understand Revan and to surpass him. Her exile, her transformation into Traya, her eventual betrayal of her apprentices, Sith, and Jedi, all of it grew from the seed planted by Revan's fall. Traya would never accept that he had simply succumbed to the dark side. She needed to believe that there was a deeper truth to be found, a path that could be completed where he had faltered and failed. This is the tragedy of Kreia. Her mind was too sharp to accept confronting illusions, but her heart was too bound to Revan's example to ever fully let go of him. Even in Darth Traya's final moments, when she faced the Jedi exile and prepared to die, she could not help but measure herself and everyone else against the legacy of Revan. In the end, Darth Traya's story is not simply the tale of a fallen Jedi or a Sith. It is the story of a philosopher who dared to question the fundamental nature of the Force itself. The story of a woman who placed all her faith in an apprentice she believed might finally break the hold that the Force had on the galaxy. Revan was, for Kreia, the embodiment of possibility. He was the promise that the cycle could end, that knowledge and will could transcend destiny. But he was also the embodiment of failure, a reminder that even the greatest minds and the strongest spirits could not escape the design of the Force. And so Kreia resolved to do what Revan could not. She would become a wound. She would shatter the illusion of the Jedi and the Sith. She would expose the Force itself as the true oppressor, and in doing that, she would finally be free. But perhaps the most haunting truth of all of this is, even as she condemned the Force, even as she sought to destroy it, Kreia always remained its instrument. Her life and her death were as much a part of the endless cycle as Revan's crusade had been. In the end, neither she nor Revan could ever truly escape. And perhaps this is why their story still resonates, because it reminds us that even those who see the truth are not always strong enough to defy it. As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives here today as we continue to document the story, life, and history of Kreia and Darth Traya, and if you would like to see more, please be sure to request it down below. And again, my friends, listen to the currents of the Force, but possess your own will to defy it. And I hope to see you again soon.